Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial on how to beat Gravity Gardens. Gravity Gardens is a scenario in the challenging category in the base game of RCT2. The goal is to get the park value of at least 500,000 and to pay back your loan. The map is quite large and has some hills, quite a few trees, a river and a lake. You start out with a network of paths going all over the park, a fairly large wooden coaster and a little over 100 guests. The ride selection for the park is very unusual. Apart from a bunch of stalls, the only rides available are a whole lot of different coaster types. Even with research, the only rides you can unlock are more coaster types. This isn't necessarily a bad ride selection, but it does make the scenario a bit more difficult if you don't know how to work with coasters. Most people tend to build larger coasters, and since you cannot build cheap flat rides to attract guests in this scenario, it is really easy to run out of money with only a couple of rides. Before we start building, I am quickly going to explain the basics of how the park value works, since the high park value requirement is the main issue in this scenario. The park value consists of three factors: the number of guests in your park, number of guests that have ridden your rides in the last 5 minutes, and the stats of your rides. By far the largest portion comes from the stats of your rides, so that is what we will focus on. Every ride has three main stats: excitement, intensity and nausea, and they all contribute to the park value. For almost every coaster type, the excitement rating contributes the most, then the intensity rating and the nausea rating contributes the least. The relation is linear, so a ride with stats twice as high will give twice as much park value. As rides get older, their value goes down a lot, which is why a lot of people get stuck on this park. Since spending more money on a single ride has diminishing returns for the stats, you should always build cheap coasters. I will illustrate this with an example. The two red coasters combined cost almost the exact same as the purple coaster, but their combined stats are much higher, so for the same cost you get a lot more park value. You can take this as far as you want. These 14 tiny looping coasters cost slightly less than the purple track in the previous example, but they give 5.5 times more park value. Now that we know why we should only build cheap coasters, we can start building. Guests have a tendency to get lost on all the paths that are already built, so the first thing that you want to do is close off a large part with no entry signs. When the accessible part of your park gets full, you can slowly open more parts of the path network. You can also delete all the extra paths entirely and build new ones yourself when you need to expand. It is a good idea to start with building a couple of stalls near the entrance so that you don't forget to do that later. A food stall, drink stall, information kiosk and a toilet is enough. You can place other stalls like the balloon stall as well if you want to. Placing cash machines is a bad idea, as you ideally want guests to leave fairly quickly so that they can be replaced with new guests that pay for the entrance again. I know that some people don't place toilets so that people that need to go to the toilet go home quicker, but that also makes them unhappy and that can negatively influence your park rating, which lowers your guest generation. You can raise all the prices of the stalls carefully to exactly how much guests are willing to pay, but I think that is a bit of a waste of time, except for umbrellas. Guests will pay anything for umbrellas when it rains. So if you make them €20, the maximum possible price, guests will all buy them at the same time when it rains, which makes you a lot of money. You can also place benches and bins on the path to reduce vomit and litter. It is not vital in this scenario as the park rating isn't super important, but a higher rating does attract more guests, so it is still a good idea to do it. Now we can start building coasters. There are a couple of coaster types available that have the potential for a really cheap design with decent stats, namely the Junior Coaster, Wild Mouse, Looping Coaster and Corkscrew Coaster. The last two are especially great as they have a launched mode, which can give much higher stats on short rides. I will now place down one of each of those 4 coaster types. To make it feel slightly less cheesy, I am using designs that are slightly larger than the tiny looping coaster design from the second example a few minutes ago. However, you can use those kinds of designs if you want the highest efficiency possible. The best design for that is the design in my profile picture, which is 2 corkscrew station pieces followed by half a corkscrew launched at 35 km per hour. You can greatly increase the stats of a ride by having it do multiple laps, but do beware of the intensity not becoming too high. The throughput will be very low, but that doesn't matter since we're not making any money with the rides. After these 4 coasters have been built and opened, we want to hire some staff. For now, 5 handymen and 2 mechanics will do. As your park gets larger and you build more coasters, you should hire more handymen and mechanics. I generally don't zone my staff, as that can lead to them getting trapped accidentally and issues like that. I'd rather hire a couple of more staff members and not have to worry about that. Now that we have a couple of coasters, we can raise the entrance price. You can charge about 10 euros per coaster and about 3 euros per flat ride, so with these 5 coasters we can charge 50 euros. This is also the minimum amount of money that guests spawn with in this scenario, so raising the entrance price any higher than this is a bad idea, as then some guests won't be able to pay it. This is also a good time to start advertising. Usually you want to run all ad campaigns, but since here we have no need for guests except for the money they pay to get into the park, you don't want to use the free entry and half price entry campaigns. The most efficient ad campaigns are the ones that last 2 weeks, as then you can get up to a whole week for free every time you buy them. If you want to know how exactly that works, click the card on the top right of the screen. To make the most money, you should constantly have the bottom 3 campaigns running. We have now discussed everything there is to discuss about building up your park and getting more park value, so from now on it's just rinse and repeat. Build more small coasters, build some more paths when you run out of space, and hire more staff as your park grows. Also, don't forget to build some more stalls on different sides of your park so that guests never have to walk very far to buy something. To make sure that your loan doesn't get too high, as you do need to pay it back in the end, it is a good idea to limit yourself to something like 15,000 or 20,000 euros, and instead of increasing your loan when you run out of money, you simply wait for some more guests to come in the park. When you reach the required park value of 500,000, you can start paying back your loan. If you just keep advertising, you should get enough guests that you can pay back your loan fairly quickly. If you go below 500,000 park value again because your rides are decreasing in value, simply build another small and cheap coaster. When your loan is paid back, you will complete the scenario immediately. And that is pretty much everything there is to it. Most of the scenario is spamming cheap coasters, doing a bit of management to keep the park rating up, and constantly advertising. Here is my finished park. As you can see, I only have small coasters and I beat the scenario in a little over a year. If you want to take a closer look at my park, a download link is in the description. If despite following this guide you still have problems with the scenario, don't hesitate to ask me about it on Twitter or on Discord. I will happily take a look at your park to see what the issues are. If you want a tutorial on a scenario that wasn't in my top 5 hardest scenarios video, let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching and I will see you in the next video.